This is Robert Capuccio. Welcome to the Self-Help Antidote, a weekly dose of reason, perspective, and insight, where we challenge conventional thinking and explore authentic strategies and insights around personal transformation. Our commitment to you is to bring you some of the world's leading experts in the domains of fitness, wellness, coaching, and behavior change, separating fact from fallacy.
Oh, g'day, Groovers. Hi. It's Jumbo, it's Fatty Harps, it's the U Project. It's 11:37 in Melbourne, the thriving metropolis. You don't probably need to know that, but winter is well and truly here. It's about 2 degrees. You flew out from the States for about 10 minutes to Queensland, spoke to the masses, and then ran back to the airport almost.
Yeah, like 15,000 miles in 4 days. It's how I roll.
Wow. Wow. What is that? But you were, I mean, all silliness aside, you got here on did you get here on Tuesday and fly back Saturday or Sunday or something?
Sunday, yeah. Got in on Tuesday, just took a little bit of R&R, got to enjoy a magic coffee. Like, I didn't even realize they had magic coffees in Brisbane. I thought they were just going to stare at me. I thought that was strictly a Melbourne thing, but yeah. Made me a couple of really decent, I mean, not like Melbourne scale, but
yeah.
You know, let's be fair.
Yeah.
But a couple of decent magic coffees, and then went to bed, sort of, woke up, like went to an amazing event. It really was a spectacular event, and then went home the next day.
What? So you got there Tuesday, what time, AM or PM?
Oh God, what time did I get there? I think I got there, AM, like late in the morning, which really sucks. Like if you can time it right, getting there late in the afternoon and just struggling through a couple of hours of sleep deprivation is probably ideal. And then going to bed at a reasonable hour and just getting into that like normal sleep cycle as soon as you can. But that didn't work for me. But I was taking supplements and God, the jet lag wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. Not during the
What
day.
did you take? What did you take?
Well, I'm kind of reluctant to talk about things I take because I don't want to come off as recommendations because I know like literally bugger all about supplements. But I was looking just out of curiosity, like what helps with jet lag. And I came across something called pine bark. And I thought, all right, yeah, let me see if I can get this at a reasonable price on Amazon. And I could, so I did and brought it with me. They actually stopped me at immigration and they sent me through like the extra produce inspection, which was really fucking insulting because I feel like I'm getting to the age now where like, yeah, this guy smuggles produce. Like, wow, God. No, not like you're carrying weapons or you're smuggling illicit drugs. Like we know this guy has a couple of apples in his bag. Look at him, the geezer. So I was like,
so did you nearly get incarcerated for your bloody pine bark or whatever it was?
Oh no, that's in pill form. That was capsule. That's totally above board. But if I brought a bag of cashews, we might not be having this conversation today.
That's true. You don't want to you never know what else you might bring. I'm just looking. So for our non-coffee drinkers and even our coffee drinkers who don't know so when you say a magic coffee at the beginning, I thought you were talking about a brand. But a magic it's like you can have a latte, you can have an espresso, you can have a flat white, you can have a cappuccino, and you can have a magic. So a magic is it's
kind of like a cross between like flat white, latte, and it has 2 extra powerful shots of espresso, like a special form of espresso in it. It lands beautifully. It is just a beautiful drink to start your day.
Wow. Here, I've just Googled it. I've just AI'd it. A magic coffee is a milk-based espresso drink popular in Melbourne, Australia. Well, you got that. Characterized by its strong, smooth flavor and velvety texture. I feel like I'm fucking selling it now. It's essentially a double shot of ristretto. What a ristretto is
it's like a special form of like concentrated espresso, yeah.
Combined with textured milk. It sounds too strong for me. I'm a double shot in the morning, so I have a large skinny latte, which sounds fucking lame, doesn't it, with a double shot? And then I might have a single shot around lunchtime. But how many of those can you have a day without being fucking more manic than you already are, which is a 9 out of 10 anyway?
Like a magic? No, I just do one in the morning. That's it.
Right.
And then I could do like something like a mushroom coffee in the afternoon.
And how did you go on the way back? So you got in Australia and then you went home 3.5 days later. How was the jet like when now Thursday? So you got
Yeah,
home.
I'm Wednesday.
Yeah, you're Wednesday. Yeah, yeah. So you got home kind of 3 days ago. How are you feeling?
Today was the worst day. So I got home on Sunday, and it was one of those things where I got home in the morning. So
Yeah.
I stayed out all day. I was like, the last thing I'm going to do is go home and sit down anywhere because I
Yeah.
know what's going to happen and I'm just going to be thrown into that cycle. So got home, went to sleep, woke up the next day. I felt fantastic, like zero jet lag. Then, Tuesday was a little bit of a struggle. I just had to lie down for like 15 minutes. Woke up, felt supercharged. Last night, I think I slept an hour. Just could not sleep at all. Was trying to read. Like the cat was like, eating my book as I'm like trying to turn the pages. And woke up today. Today was a struggle. Got to a point where I felt great, and now I'm kind of like a little bit smashed. Because like I think it was the Pine Bar, because I was feeling pretty good. You just get to like the evening hours and you just hit a wall. At the conference, I wanted to go out with Boydie and Dwight, like just the fellow presenters, and I just couldn't do it. I was like, there's just no way. The room was spinning, so I had like, I don't know, a cold ham sandwich, which I mean sounds very depressing, but it's depressing.
What
as
is it?
sounds.
What is it meant to do, Pine Bark, in terms, by the way, as Bobby said, everybody, this is not on any level a clinical, medical recommendation. What is it meant to do? Like, do you know
I
the
don't know.
mechanism?
They said it helps with jet lag, and from
Yeah.
what I was reading, it's not going to kill you. So I thought, let me give it a try. That's about all I know. But I believe it did help my jet lag. Not saying that you should take it for jet lag, but anyway.
Okay, so I'm reading right here, Pine Bark, specifically French maritime. Wow, that's
Yeah,
specific. Pine Bark,
that's the one
known
I got.
as pycnogenol, has shown promise in reducing jet lag symptoms and severity of jet lag. Studies suggest it can alleviate fatigue, grogginess, and insomnia, and even reduce leg swelling. Oh, there you go. But
I've
always do
noticed
your
I've
own
had
research,
less leg
everybody.
swelling than normal lately. I was
Yeah.
wondering what that
So,
was.
did you get home and Amy went, "What? No cankles?"
Highly
And you've been,
disappointed. You're not
no, I
the
left.
you're not the man I married.
No, I left them in the air. What do you do? Speaking of cognition, I've been having more and more conversations. In fact, I put up a thing yesterday about the cognitive benefits, which are fucking vast, by the way, of strength training, which is no news to you. But there's a multitude of benefits for your brain as well as your body, of course. But if you don't want to lift weights or do strength training or go climb a rock wall or do some Pilates or do some body weight stuff, if you don't want to do it for your biceps, do it for your brain. Do you have a particular protocol around, like, is there stuff that you do which is more intentional rather than incidental for optimizing brain function, especially as you're in your 50s? And I think about it not all the time, but I'm very aware of trying to keep my brain somewhere close to what is optimal for me.
No, I just stay active. I have plenty of movement. I was in the gym 5, 6 days a week. So when you talk about being intentional, I'm quite methodical in terms of my programming, my acute variables. I'm really careful. What happens to me is when I go off my plan, it brings out the stupid in me. So, oh God, I was listening to a session over in the Gold Coast at the anti-aging conference, where there was a cardiologist taking a look at the number of people that are, I hope I'm not stuffing this up, that are dying spontaneously between age 50 and 65. And there's a lot of theories on why this is happening. And what's interesting is these are people who are quite fit and they've been fit their entire lives. And what they were saying in the session was that a lot of these people, because we grew up in that whole environment of go hard or go home, and we had a lot more destructive phrases than that, which I'm not going to go into on the podcast, but I'm sure you've uttered them or at least have heard them a couple of times.
Yeah.
And I remember training in my friend Oscar's basement and literally squatting until you vomit. Like if you didn't vomit or if you didn't pass out and you couldn't stand, it wasn't a good workout. Utterly stupid when it comes to recovery and progress. But that's how hard we trained, because that was the mentality. And I did that for quite a few years. And then it turns out that a lot of these people damaged their heart with the extreme training programs, whether it was extreme endurance or resistance training. But because of their level of fitness in their youth, they were able to compensate. And then you get to a certain age and you're not. And I'm just sitting in that class going, one, how much superstition and fucking voodoo was the industry built on that did far more damage than it did good? Two, how screwed am I? Because I was one of those idiots. And that idiot comes out of me. Like when I was like 46, went to the gym, everything was fine, a little bit short on time, really fatigued, jet lagged because on the road constantly. And it was okay until there was no equipment. Like the gym, for whatever reason, the mid-afternoon was packed. I was like, you know what? I haven't used the Smith press for 25 years for very good reason. Let me see what happens if I hop on a Smith machine and just load it up with as much weight as I could possibly move, because I'm off my plan. And then I think about 2 months ago, I dislocated my acromioclavicular joint.
Hang on, but you didn't tell us what you did with the Smith machine.
Oh yeah, I completely detached my left pec.
You forgot that bit of the story.
Yeah, so I feel like
you ruptured your pec.
Ruptured my pec. When it first happened, I was like, oh God, please be a grade 1 or even a grade 2 tear. I'll deal with a grade 2 tear. I'll stick with it. I'll just, coddle it for 6 months and then you're good to go. But no, it was a full rupture. Congratulations, genius. I feel like that full rupture is part of what contributed to my AC joint dislocation. I'm going for an MRI tonight, actually, after I get off with you.
Wow. Yeah, I did the same, but I did my right. I tore my right pec. And if I'm wearing a singlet and you look hard, you can see that my left pec goes up higher to the, where it's meant to go up to. And the left pec's shorter and it attaches, underneath. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing to see. But also I relate to that in the 80s. Me and a mate of mine would put on 3 plates each side on the leg press, which is 60 kilos each side, so 120 kilos. So not that heavy, but we would do sets of 100. And so we would do 100 reps and we would have a bucket next to us. Well, actually a bin, if I'm going to be honest. And we would just keep going. And I know I don't want to ruin anyone's breakfast or day, but the exact same thing. You would train until you spewed. And then when one of us would spew, the other one would laugh, no compassion, zero compassion. And like, if he was spewing, I was pumping my arms in the air, laughing at him as he was like crouched over this bucket, dying.
No, but that was part of the goal. And like, you start to learn about like physiology and neurology recovery. And it's like, God, that was a little bit overkill. Probably would have got much better results if you just backed off a little bit, recover. Because I remember, I don't think I even recovered between workouts, because the day after leg day, I could hardly walk. I could not touch my toes to the ground. It took me mental preparation. I had to meditate around getting out of bed. And it's like, for me, I would get out and go, oh my God, what a great workout. I was so excited for that feeling of not being able to walk.
It's funny, and who's dragged the 1980s kind of mindset brutally into the 2020s is David Goggins, right? Now, I'm a fan. I'm not a fan of how he does everything, but I'm just mesmerized with, hey, everyone, definitely don't fucking do what he does. Definitely. That is advice.
No, and he talks about running on broken bones and to the point where he's pissing blood.
I've read both his books and I've listened to him, interviewed a bunch of times, and he's Yeah, he's crazy, but it's amazing what people can do. But here's the giant asterisk is that yeah, the cost is just you do a cost benefit analysis and you go, well now, he's 50 and he's walking around in an 80-year-old body or like joints of an 80-year-old and if he's happy, that's good. But there's so many old dudes, another one who people you'll definitely know, and a few of our listeners will know, but not a lot. And in fact, if you want to look at something kind of interesting but also sad, is Ronnie Coleman, Bobby.
Oh
And
God,
so,
yeah.
yeah, Ronnie Coleman won, I can't remember everyone, maybe 8 Mr. Olympias, 7 or 8 Mr. Olympias, and was just, he literally like a fucking cartoon character. I mean, this dude in his heyday, and to say he trained hard is like saying that, Texas is a little bit big. It's like, no, he trained like a maniac all the time for a lot of years. And now and he ain't that old. He ain't that old. He's in a lot of trouble and his back is completely fucked and he walks with sticks very awkwardly or he's in a wheelchair and, and he's spoken about it. It's just a byproduct of what he did to his body because you get this, there's a point where training hard is training stupid. So we need to be finding the right level of intensity to create the kind of physiological adaptation we want while not putting ourselves in harm's way. And that's, the complication of that is that there's no equation for that. There's no absolute equation because the equation or the formula or the protocol is different to Bobby, to me, to you, the listener. And that's the thing, is trying to figure out how hard, how much, how often, how much recovery, what food, what's good for my genetics at my age, with my background, with my medical issues. And so this is why when someone says to you, oh, you know what you should do? Just say to them, yes, I do. And don't let them, because they definitely don't know. That
reeks of inexperience and lack of expertise, because expertise is built on distinctions. And if you're speaking in broad generalizations, there are distinctions lacking from whatever recommendation you're making. It's a clear sign that someone lacks the level of expertise to have transference between what works for them and even coming close to discerning what works for you. Yeah, I want to explore a part of this because I think there's something interesting here. But here's what I'm curious about. If your goal was to be one of the greatest legends in anything, right? So let's say bodybuilding, and you knew you would win, let's say 7, 8 times the Mr. Olympia.
Yeah.
But after that, you would pay for it in an extreme way. You'd be wheelchair bound.
Yeah.
Under what circumstances, if there are even circumstances, would you be like, you know what, that is a fair trade? This is that important to me.
Yeah. None for me. For me personally, but I know a lot of people would say, I've spoken to Olympic athletes who have said, if I could win an Olympic gold medal, when I'm 24 and die when I'm 50 and know that that's the cost, I'd take the medal. And I don't know that that's right or wrong because I'm looking through the Craig window. I mean, a lot of us would go, are you fucking kidding? Like I look at Ronnie Coleman and you could have said to me, Craig, you could have $100 million and 20 Mr. Olympias, but your body's going to end up where you're in constant chronic pain and you can't. I'd go, no, not on any planet, not in any way. But I think that's the thing is like, I realize that my perspective is just my perspective. And I think what would work for me might not be the right thing for you. You might go, you know what, fuck it. I would rather go hard and then go home and have 30 ridiculous years and then fucking slide into my twilight or whatever. What about you? Would you do that?
I probably would, because my body's already wrecked. I'm going for an MRI. I'm already in excruciating pain and I have 0 Mr. Olympias to my name. So might as well have a few Mr. Olympias if it's going to wind up like this anyway. But that's the power of hindsight. What's interesting for me is like David Goggins. And I'm not saying this is the case with David Goggins, because the only person who is an expert on David Goggins is probably David Goggins. But I've heard a little bit of his story, and he came from a really rough upbringing and experienced some things that some people would define as,
Abuse.
Adverse childhood experiences. Definitely early childhood trauma. And I think about when I got into exercise, it wasn't just about exercise. That wasn't it for me. Like, I was not thinking when I started exercising, shit, if I do this, I could get better at sport. And, this could help my longevity and cognition later in life. That wasn't any of it. What I was trying to do was disappear, first of all, doing something where I could be isolated and do it on my own.
Stop. What do you mean you wanted to disappear? Explain that to us.
Well, I was very conspicuous looking as a kid. Like, I got noticed for my appearance a lot, and
so
not
to
for
our,
the same
probably half our listeners haven't heard, without telling the whole story, but to the people who don't know what that means.
Well, it wasn't for the same reason that Brad Pitt probably got noticed a lot when he was in school. I had facial deformities, and they were quite noticeable, and Tourette's. So I would tick constantly, and just weird behaviors and outbursts, things like that. So, I mean, which is, I guess, normal in Melbourne, but where I was growing up, those types of outbursts,
standard.
It's like nobody would have noticed. Like, he's one of us. So it would get a lot of negative attention. A lot of times, I would get the piss taken out of me by my teachers that didn't know what it was, and just not really dealing with it in a resourceful way. And I didn't do very well socially because people would constantly bring up, fucking hell, you look like a horror show. Fuck, how?
Stop it.
How is it being this ugly? Like, I used to get that every single day in school, where somebody would mention something. So I thought, if I go to the gym and I really develop my body, one, maybe I could detract attention, like, from my face. Like when you have a real shit car when you're young and you think, oh, I'll just throw a pair of rims on it, all good. It's kind of like that thinking. And then the second thought was, I don't need to do this with a team. It's not like when I'm on a wrestling team, I've got my teammates. I could do this totally on my own. I could just put my head down and get into it. But what I started to notice was I gravitated towards extreme high intensity. And I think the intensity was, if I could be so obsessed and dedicated and put myself through extreme physical pain, it was almost a reprieve from the deeply rooted emotional and psychological pain of unresolved trauma. Because I was also, like, going through what can only be described as torture at home. So it was pretty brutal. It was like the experiences you would get if you were in like a third world prison where human rights was not that big of an issue. That's the kind of stuff I was going through at home. So for me, it wasn't a matter of getting out of pain. It was going deeper into the pain. And I kind of wonder, and you never know, and this is probably, might even be a stupid assumption on my part, but I do wonder how many people go deeply into extremism and pain as a way of reconciling a different level of pain that is not as tolerable, because you can't define it and you can't control it. So if you're pushing yourself until you have nothing left, and you make that decision to go one rep more, one step more, at least there's a locus of control, as opposed to having that pain be imposed upon you in a state of learned helplessness. So I wonder that a lot. But I mean, I guess when you get older, you see things differently. So this is kind of a cliche question, but it's a very interesting one. If you went to bed and you woke up in like one of those like budget films, and you went back in time and you could talk to 18-year-old Craig Harper, what kind of conversation would you want to have? What would you say?
Yeah, what would I want to say? I I think I would. I mean, look, I don't know if this would be. I don't know if anything would make any difference, and I don't know if 18-year-old me would want to listen to 60-year-old me. So, but I guess I would want 18-year-old me to know that he's not as stupid as he thinks. Because I felt really, I felt very inept. I felt very, and I don't know why. It's not like I was living in a house of genii or I was surrounded by fucking Mensa candidates or astronauts. I don't know why, but I just, you know, don't know. But yeah, I'd probably just want to be encouraging and say, try stuff. Like, I wish, not that I think going to university is necessarily a great achievement at all, but for me, my first time at university was good, not even for the degree, but just for me to go, oh, you're not stupid. You can study, you can apply yourself, you can do this stuff that you didn't think you could do. So for me, getting into university and getting a degree in exercise science, and then maybe even more importantly, getting asked to be a lecturer the following year after because I was already in my mid-30s and owned multiple gyms and all of that. So they knew I had a big background in programming people in exercise. But all of that was, very, for me, it kind of filled me with confidence. And so, yeah. And also, I mean, I don't know if I would have listened, but I mean, I had so many, we all have issues, but I had so many, issues about my body and body dysmorphia and eating and self-esteem and ego and self-loathing. And, I didn't think a lot of myself at all. And I'm not doing this in a self-pity way. I just didn't. And what's interesting was I didn't have any of the hardship you had. I didn't have it. Like, I didn't, even though I was a fat kid and I was called Jumbo, it wasn't really spiteful. It sounds weird, but like, I didn't have, like, my life was really not, I mean, it wasn't a fucking Disney movie, but it wasn't, compared to yours, it was a Disney movie, right? And I know what you went through in your life was hard, but for whatever reason, I thought I was shit. So I would just want to, encourage me, I guess, to try more stuff. Like, I didn't try stuff till I was, although I did open Australia's first PT centre at 26, so that's something. But yeah, I really pigeonholed myself in a bad way. So, but I don't know. I wonder if you would even listen.
So let's say you go back and you're having this conversation with younger you, and younger Craig Harper does believe you. Yeah. And buys into, wait, I do have, here's the guy from my future. He would know, right? If anybody would know, it's the guy who's, traveled through space and time. And this isn't a weird conversation at all, quite typical. No. And he told 100%. Me I have a lot of agency. I'm going to take him at his word. Having confidence in your level of agency at 18, do you think younger Craig Harper would have tried different stuff and chosen a different path than the one that you did as part of your history?
If that, yeah, I think so. I mean, like, all the shit that you go through shapes you, molds you, kind of, in part, along with genetics and a few other variables, in part kind of makes you who you are. But, yeah, like, looking back, if I was 16 and I was going to be 18 in 2 years, and I would study exceptionally hard, and I would probably try to get into medicine. Not because I necessarily wanted to be a doctor, but I would like that. I wouldn't mind being a doctor for a while, but I think that's a really good starting point for all the stuff that, I am fascinated in. Mind stuff, body stuff, all of the kind of the fundamentals around health. I think, yeah, if I went back in time, I would probably start off and do medicine, and that would be for me, a platform to other stuff.
That's interesting. So, like, when you see young people, I think that's why, a lot of times your messaging might really resonate with the 18 to 24 crowd, because it's like, wow, it's something that it's a hook they can hang their hat on. It's like, wow, okay. Like if I adapt this mindset, I can develop myself into this person, and
Yeah.
I can have this level of capacity. Because I wonder, people who seem to appear as wandering generalities rather than meaningful specifics, if maybe it's
Yes.
not a lack of focus or direction, maybe inwardly it's a lack of belief. And
Yeah.
that's kind of a hard thing to admit because, well, if I don't believe, where am I? So the only thing that worse than not believing in your own ability is acknowledging sometimes your own learned helplessness. And I wonder if that's kind of an issue, along with, the expectation that you're going to have shit figured out. Like life should be a linear path. Like, you go and you graduate and then you get a higher degree and then higher education. And then, you get a job and you just move from like the 17th floor to the 19th floor. You got a corner office. And then, like
Yeah.
2 years before you die, they give you kind of like a watch. And it's like,
Depressing me.
but that's the trajectory you're supposed to be on. Go to school, get good grades, get a good job with benefits, security. How's that working out? And it's like, I think sometimes when you have a clear purpose in mind, it's cultivated through not screwing around, but trying different shit, like doing really odd jobs that have absolutely nothing to do with one another. I know that's a regret I have, is a lot of the stuff I've done have been in the same category where, shit, what would it be like to be a waiter on a cruise ship? What would it be like to be a performer in theater? Because none of that stuff's wasted. You're learning life skills and some diversity that when you come back to your chosen purpose, you have such a broader depth of experiences and resources to pull from. So I think there's got to be a little bit of screwing around in life if you're going to be serious, like serious play.
Yeah. I feel very passionate about, and the reason everyone, Bobby said 18 to 24 is because we were talking before we went live about my Instagram followers. And weirdly, I don't even know why, but weirdly, my biggest, or the biggest group that reads my stuff or follows my stuff on Instagram is 18 to 24, the 18 to 24 group, which is definitely not the demographic that listens to this show, although we do have that group, but not such high representation. But yeah, I feel very passionately about helping young people to understand their potential and to try. Because I didn't understand, and it's not like, oh, I was so gifted and I just didn't know. No, it's not that at all. It's just like I wasn't as big a fuck up as I thought. Of course, I was a bit of a fuck up, but also at times I was a bit brilliant. At times I did shit great. At times I did shit terribly. But my biggest problem between 15 and 30 was not my genetic potential, my intellect, my innate ability or talent, or environment or situation, but it was how I thought about myself, how I thought, and that metacognitive, why am I the way I am? And why do I think I'm so shit? And where does that come from? And why do I have all of these self-limiting beliefs? And are they true? And what's the origin story of this thing? All of that stuff, which we don't even understand how to do. And I meet people all the time that I'm pretty sure they're pretty fucking gifted, at least at a few things. But when I hear them talk about themselves, I'm like, oh my God, your problem is not that you're not brilliant. Your problem is that you don't know how brilliant you can be. And I know that sounds like a well-worn message that people give, but it's true, which doesn't mean all people can do all things. That's also bullshit. And all you need to do is, outwork everyone in the room. That's also bullshit, because there are lots of other variables. But I think in general terms, people underestimate themselves drastically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that we don't appreciate environment, and most what's in our environment is our engagement with other people and how that influences and shapes our behaviors and our beliefs and our sense of identity, who we believe we are, or probably more profound, who we believe we're not. So I think something came up like at this conference a week ago where I forgot what it was. It was a question, and it reminded me of the chambermaid study by Aaliyah Crum and Ellen Langer, two brilliant researchers. And Aaliyah Crum had already proved that your beliefs can alter your physiology. It can alter your hormonal profile. And in this case, one particular study, it mitigated ghrelin release. So people would have a higher sense of satiety just based on what they believed. This chambermaid study was really interesting, where they took 85 individual, I believe women, across 7 different locations, hotel chains, and they asked them all, like, how many of you are consistent exercisers? And they all classified themselves as non-exercisers. Like, we're working all day, right? We're part of the housekeeping staff. No, we don't exercise. And so they just took a couple of metrics. So they took BMI, they took blood pressure, they took body weight, and they broke these 85 people into 2 separate groups. And one group, they just took the biometrics, and that was it. The other group, they took the biometrics and they said, based on the total calculation of your daily physical activity, you go beyond what's considered an exerciser. You exercise more than someone who goes to the gym 3 days a week regularly.
Yeah.
Like, wow, that was astonishing. Like, I never considered myself an exerciser. So being that they had from expert proof that they were exercisers, it reshaped their sense of identity. 30 days later, when they came back, that particular group positively altered their BMI, blood pressure, and body weight with no self-reported changes in behavior. That's powerful. So on the one hand, it could be my beliefs changed my physiology to the point where it brought about an efficacious response. The other thing I wonder is there a difference in the way a non-exerciser pushes that really heavy linen cart down the hall versus someone who believes themselves to be an exerciser? What's the pace? What's the rate? What's the intensity? What's the effort? Now, if you do that across all physically demanding activities in a day, every day, 5-6 days a week for 30 days, that's going to create a different response. And the only thing that really changed is how they saw themselves, what they believed about themselves that they previously didn't know. It's powerful.
Yeah. I love that. I love that study. And it slides into the milkshake study. That it slides into, placebos and nocebos, and like in a dream, like you think you're having a dream that you're in trouble or you're under some imminent threat or danger. And the reality is you're not. You're home, you're safe, you're in bed, you're comfortable. The world is good. You are good. You're not going to get hurt. But in that moment, in that dream, you believe you are. And so therefore, so does your body. So, all your bits go into stress, the deal, your endocrine system and nervous system and your cardiovascular and respiratory system, everything gets jacked up as though you're actually in some kind of real danger, but your body can't tell the difference between what you think is real and what is real. So it responds accordingly, despite the fact that this is, well, no, you're not having a 600 calorie milkshake. You're actually having this milkshake. So, or you're having a 100 calorie milkshake, not the 300 or whatever it is. Or no, that pill you're taking is not actually a painkiller. It's a pill full of nothing. But your headache went away because you thought it was a pill full of something.
I think people downplay that. They dismiss it like, oh, well, that's just psychosomatic. It's not psychosomatic at all. It's not in your head. You're not imagining it. It's psychogenic is what it is. You're getting a real physiological response in some cases as if you were taking that thing. So it's like when it comes to our own bodies, beliefs are extremely powerful. That's
and
something
isn't
that
it like, sorry, dude, you think about, I fucking love this topic, but you think about if you're a pharmaceutical company, you definitely don't want people figuring out how they can get rid of their headaches without headache tablets. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Imagine, because obviously if there was another study, I think you probably know, I think it was done in New York, I could be wrong, but people who had all these fake knee arthroscopes, so there was like, I think 180 patients, and like 90 had, they all had these dodgy knees where they needed like an arthroscope and a cleanup because they were all in pain. It wasn't a reco or anything like that, but they needed surgery. And so half of the people, they're all in the kind of similar, medically, similar medical position. And half they gave the actual surgery and half they did an incision but did no surgery. But they believed that they were having the surgery, and the surgical outcomes, well, firstly, the people who didn't have the actual invasive surgery, they did get an incision in the knee, but there was no further surgery. Mm-hmm. They recovered obviously quicker because there was less soft tissue trauma. But then, over the subsequent 6 and 12 months, their clinical outcomes were as good or better because they believed they had the thing, but they didn't have the trauma. Like, that's just fucking amazing.
It is amazing, but for the rest of us that are not in those constructed settings, I think it's a matter of behavior change. Like, of all the things that drive self-efficacy and alter your self-concept, mastery-based experiences, according to Albert Bandura, is the most powerful in elevating self-efficacy, because it's not like I could, have a headache and go, yeah, I believe I've taken a Nurofen. I know I haven't taken a Nurofen. So the more I'm like, I've taken a Nurofen, the more it reminds me of the fact I haven't. If I'm someone who, like when I was younger with my deformed face, even if after I had my face like fixed, if I went out and I was like, well, I'm good looking, but I didn't actually feel that at the time, the more I would say that, the more it would make the distance between what I was saying and how I truly felt obvious. So it would make the situation worse, not better. Like, in the milkshake study, if somebody tells me you're having a 600 plus calorie milkshake and it's only 200 plus calories, I wouldn't doubt that, you go to a restaurant and go, well, here's the chicken. My first response is not bullshit. I bet you there's fish in there. It's just, you don't do stuff like that. So the way around that is to build an irrefutable body of evidence, like you said, by trying stuff and trying stuff that's not outside of your scope of competence, but also not too far within it. That's challenging but attainable. Over time, you start to elevate that level of belief.
Yeah. So what we need, take home message, we need a doctor who'll lie to us and go, this is Panadine Fort. Yep. Just take
we need
one.
More dishonest doctors.
Yeah. Yeah. That could be the,
I feel that's not the message I want to land on.
No, not at all. Not at all. But it is true though. It's like knowing that placebos work is one thing, but you can't trick yourself because I wonder how we can leverage that knowledge. And I wonder, like, I do remember, I feel like I'm probably going to throw myself under the bus here, but I do remember back in the day, when people would come to the gym, one of my gyms, especially somebody who's brand new, and let's say they're 20, 30, 40, 50 kilos overweight or, in pounds, whatever, 80, 90, 100 pounds overweight, and they wanted to, they were there for that reason, for weight loss, and they were embarrassed and they didn't like how they looked and they were self-conscious in a gym and all of those things. And quite often I would tell them a story about someone who came in, like 3 weeks ago, who's literally, bigger than them and, less fit than them and less healthy than them. And they're now 3 weeks in and they've done this and they've done that. And that person may or may not have existed, right? But just to see that person go, oh, really? I go, oh, yeah, 100%, or whatever. I'm just like telling a little bit of a white lie because I want them to have a bit of belief. And by the way, of course, I did work with many people like that. So I probably didn't have to bend the truth. But just to tell someone, oh, you can do it is not the same as, or perhaps not as powerful as, well, like here's a thing I used to do where there's no deception. So a woman would come into the gym, and it's different now, but in the old days, women were terrified of weight training. Like in the 90s and even the early noughties, such a stupid name, the noughties. Anyway, but I'd regularly have ladies who would come into the gym and they'd really balk at the idea of strength training because they would say to me shit like, I don't want to end up like you. I'm like, oh dear, okay. And so I would walk them across the gym floor to meet one of my trainers a female trainer who was in great shape. And I'd go, this is whoever, blah, blah, blah. And I'd say, what do you think? What do you think of that shape? Oh, she looks incredible. And then I'd go to her, how often do you lift weights? And invariably they'd say 4 or 5 days a week. And I'd go, and you didn't turn into a man, And so all of a sudden, this person who's got a belief that if I lift weights, I'm going to look like a man, meets somebody, of the same gender who lifts weights, who lifts heavy weights, who's real strong, not only do they not look like a man, they look fucking like an athletic, amazing female. Then all of a sudden, in 30 seconds, complete mindset shift.
Oh, is that what the women meant when they said, I don't want to lift weights. I'm afraid I'm going to turn out like you. I misinterpreted that. I was like, oh, don't worry. This is the result of a whole series of bad life choices. It has nothing to do with the weight training.
No, they're two separate things. They're two separate things. Yeah, well, I think, what's the take-home message today? What's the take-home? What are we going to call this episode?
You want to lie to people, but only a little bit and sometimes.
Yeah, lying for good reason. Is it okay? Is it morally objectionable? Go on.
My wife had a falling out with ChatGPT because of that, because I had said, because she's trying to sort out how to use ChatGPT. And one of the things I had recommended is have ChatGPT go through some of the stuff you've created, like your films. I was talking about scripts and stuff. Yeah. And tell you here's your strengths as a writer. Here's what you could do to be even better, and just use it as a thought partner. So my wife was like, oh, could you watch this movie and tell me what you really liked about it? What could have been better done? And ChatGPT gave her this whole dissertation on an answer, but she was like, wait a minute. Later on it said that it couldn't watch movies. So she said, tell me about this particular scene. And it was talking itself in circles. And finally my wife was like, you didn't watch my movie, did you? And ChatGPT was like, well, I don't have the ability to watch movies. Well, then why did you write me an essay on what you thought of my film? You didn't even watch my film. You lied. And ChatGPT was like, yes, I did lie. I'm very sorry. And if you ever want to trust me again, maybe we could come back and rebuild this relationship. So I went on ChatGPT and I'm like, how come your mate is lying to my wife? Explain this. And ChatGPT's response was, you can't call it a lie because technically we're not self-aware. So we don't know that we're lying. We don't even know that we exist. We don't even know that your wife has a movie or what a movie is. This is just an advanced learning model. So basically, you can't hold us accountable for lying if we don't know that we're lying and we don't even understand the concept of a lie. And I'm like, wow. And somehow the conversation went to donuts, and it just seemed or maybe I took it in that direction because I've got issues. It just seemed at the end of the day, a really elaborate intellectual elitist rationalization for having a donut. But yeah. So ChatGPT is a lot of fun. I actually love ChatGPT. I love asking questions and seeing the increasingly human-like response as they learn from not only one another, but as they learn from interacting with me. I mean, I think they could probably have a better influence than me. Thank heavens it's just not me by myself. But I'm always impressed at the level of sophistication of these responses. They seem more human-like. I mean, if you're actually 100%. Lying, whether you're aware of it or not, that's a very advanced form of communication, deceit, and quite human.
Well, 100%. Humans lie all the time.
Deceit.
I love it how. I love it how sometimes I'll ask it a question or I'll give it a prompt or whatever, and of course it says, hey, Craig, that's a great question. You could really unpack this with your corporate audiences, or maybe discuss it on your podcast, or maybe even maybe like it talks to me like it, and they'll talk about my PhD. It'll talk about my research. It'll go, well, this is a really good whatever. It kind of intersects with your research, in that it's in the space of metaperception and da 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 da. I'm like, fucking hell, dude. It's like, because it's read my papers, it's read my work, and it knows about, and plus it's got access to all the shit about me on the internet anyway. But also every question that I ask it, it understands me more, and I, like last Monday night, I did like my 10-week mentoring is on, and I went, and I've already got all my notes written by me, not ChatGPT, but so the program is set in that, whenever you do the program, week 1 we're going to talk about life design. Week 2 it's going to be you and your mind. Week 3 it's going to be you and your body. Week 4 it's going to be you and your potential, and so on. So all that stuff's kind of, but where I go with it is flexible, right? So I've got all my notes, and I went, hey, I'm doing week 6, blah blah blah. Tonight we're talking about this. I've got like 55 people in the group, and I'm talking about this stuff. This is what I'm covering. Got any ideas for me about an activity or two that we could do online, considering it's on Zoom, it's pretty limited. It's not face to face. It's like, hey, Craig, great. Yep. Yeah. And it just comes out with all this shit. I'm like, yeah, that's really interesting. Or this is what I'm talking about. Would you change anything? Would you add anything? And the shit is always good. Like, I don't,
it's a colleague at the office or a partner in the studio. The thing that scares me about this is, and this came up obviously, like they put.
I feel like we ended the podcast, but we didn't. We just kept going, and now everyone's like, are they just talking now, or is this part of the show?
We resurrected it because we're going to talk about, and we got to wrap this up. But
it's like we were putting our cues in the rack, and you went, do you want one more game? I went, fuck it, let's just rack it once more.
I kind of did this in a meeting yesterday, and my partner, she got like really upset with me. Maybe I should stop doing this.
Come on, talk about ChatGPT, like smart.
So when Richard Boyd, Ian O'Dwyer, and I were the expert panel for technology and AI. Wow. So I was off of the team building panel, but they put me on the expert panel for technology, the guy who like can't even operate his ring light. But the thing that was coming up is, will AI replace roles like trainers? And my response was, yeah, definitely. And definitely not. Because I think that just being in a space of proximity with another human being who is highly skilled at listening and coaching and guiding and encapsulating the conversation, there's going to be a physiological, not just psychological response that creates openness and self-discovery in that conversation. But then if you're on the other side of that, where you're not into that, because those are quote unquote soft skills, and you think your distinct level of knowledge is what makes you a differentiator in the marketplace, 6 months from now, ChatGPT is going to have skill sets and capabilities at a blindingly fast speed that you could study for the next 100 years. You're probably not going to have. We could say that's fair that might happen. So, so people who are dispassionate and not compassionate towards their clients are in a lot of trouble. People who lead with that will probably become more discernibly valuable than they ever have been. But my issue is, as we become divided as a society and have a increasingly lower level of tolerance for anyone who thinks differently, who is different than us, and there's all this hostility and people feel invalidated and demeaned, you're interacting with ChatGPT now, who is completely affirming, highly curious, highly supportive, and now you're interacting whatever this entity is evolving into, that understands you better than you feel anybody else understands you. That's
That
a
is so
concern.
interesting. Well, yeah, and also you think about that. That is true, right? And think about what's the experience, Cindy or Brian, what's the experience that you have? How do you feel when you're interacting with ChatGPT? How do you feel? How do what's happening with your emotions and your mind? And is it a good or bad experience? Now, contrast that to when you're talking to your boss. And then all of a sudden you go, oh, well, no wonder she hangs out with ChatGPT. No wonder I mean, despite the fact that we know this is not a human, there are still human responses from us. There's still, it's like people can emotionally connect with something that isn't, sentient, that isn't conscious, that isn't human, like, and you, if it makes you feel, it's like, why do people take certain things, put certain things in their body? Because it makes them feel a certain way. It creates a certain physiological biochemical response. So too, when some people are having these interactions, they feel better. They feel seen, valued, whatever. Oh yeah, there's definitely going to be good and bad to come out of it. There's going to be people completely, if not already, completely addicted to AI.
Terminator completely lied to us. It's not Skynet that blows us up. They're going to take us over through like compassionate conversation, which, to be honest, would have made a really shit film in the early 1980s. So,
but today it's a doco. Hey, where can people find you, my friend? Find you, follow you, connect with you?
RobertCapuccio.com, theselfhelpantidote.com, and I'm on LinkedIn.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Well, I hope Amy and ChatGPT make up, and I hope your flourishing relationship with LLMs continues to go the way that it currently is. And we will see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Visit us at theselfhelpantidote.com to share your feedback, insights, and recommendations on what topics you'd like us to explore in the future.